Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bergeson and Campbell and the ACTA Group's webinar on TSCA CBI Re-substantiation. I'm Lynn Bergeson, and I'm pleased to be your moderator during this webinar. It is now mid-April, and we are fast approaching, believe it or not, the 10-year anniversary of Lautenberg's enactment. It's astonishing to me that 10 years has gone by. But this means, of course, that certain CBI claims submitted post-Lautenberg are limited, thanks to Lautenberg, to 10 years of protection. And that deadline is really fast approaching. What that means is that for those claims, it triggers the need to approach EPA and request an extension of that protection. And doing so is what we are going to be talking about for the next hour. We are going to focus on the when, the why, and how to prepare for the June start of the resubstantiation process. I know we've all been looking forward to it, and we're all waiting for EPA to provide some guidance on this topic, but we thought we'd jump in and help our community out. So your guides to this process during this webinar are Dr. Rich Engler, the Director of Chemistry here at Bergeson and Campbell and the ACTA Group, who needs no introduction. He is a master of all things TSCA, and we're so pleased that he's here to share his brilliance on this topic. Rich is joined by Ryan Schmit of Counsel to BNC and a 15-year veteran of the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention. Ryan supported EPA's efforts to reauthorize TSCA back in 2016, and he's been very much present and an active participant in TSCA and Lautenberg implementation measures until he joined us last year, late last year. So we're really pleased that Ryan will share his perspective, his brilliance, and his intimate knowledge of all things TSCA on this program. You should have received by now the PowerPoint presentation, the biographies of our speakers, which provide much more background on Rich and Ryan, and a resources list, which I think you will find very helpful. They are also available in the materials component of your dashboard. Like we always do, we are going to go through the webinar today and then open it up to Q&A in the last 15, 20 minutes of the program. And we have already received a lot of questions, and we hope to get more to help the conversation and ensure everybody is comfortable walking into this brave new resubstantiation process. Questions that we are unable to answer in real time, and even if we do answer them, we always follow up with all of the questions and written responses to those questions. We will be sending all of the materials, the Q&A document, and a recording of the webinar to all of our registrants in a day or so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to get the party started. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Just a quick here recap of the agenda, which Lynn covered. We'll try to cover some of the basics, the why, the statutory requirements in the background, the when, so when companies can expect notices of expiration from EPA, when extension requests must be submitted, when to hear back, when to expect to hear back from EPA on its determinations, and then the how to prepare for this new process, including some insights on EPA's expected implementation and their schedule, and advice on what you can do now and what you should be doing moving forward to best position yourself for compliance. So then we'll take some questions at the end. And as Lynn mentioned, some were submitted in advance, so thank you for that. We'll have an ability to receive additional questions as we go along. So just a little bit of table setting here. Confidential business information, or CBI, has been protected under TSCA since 1976. It's nothing new. Congress clearly recognized then and continues to recognize today that information like trade secrets, sensitive and proprietary information that's related to the operation of businesses, if that information is publicly disclosed, it can substantially harm the competitive and financial interests of that company. So where companies claim certain information submitted to EPA under TSCA as CBI, EPA has long been required to protect that information from public disclosure. And I probably don't need to remind folks on this webinar just how important maintaining protections for CBI can be. Companies obviously invest years of time and effort, substantial amounts of money into research and development activities for these technologies, and maintaining appropriate protections for CBI is essential to preserving that investment. It's also important in order to encourage future innovation on newer, better, and more sustainable chemicals moving forward. But in 2016, Congress comprehensively amended TSCA, including a number of changes to Section 14 covering CBI. And on the whole, I would say that those amendments pushed for, on the one hand, um, a greater balance on the one hand between ensuring protection for legitimate CBI and on the other hand, increasing the overall transparency of chemical information. So, for example, some of the changes in 2016 increased CBI access for states and local governments, emergency responders, and others. Other portions of the amendments sought to rein in unnecessary CBI claims. So there were some concerns at that time that companies were perhaps overclaiming CBI, making CBI claims that were unwarranted. And to this end, the amendments included new requirements that certain CBI claims be substantiated, essentially better supported, and that EPA review and make determinations on those claims. So it's 100% of CBI claims for chemical identity and 25% of all others moving forward. But most relevant to our discussion today, the amendments also included a sunset or an expiration date for some CBI claims. So prior to this change, information claimed as CBI could, at least in theory, stay secret forever. But now, unless a request for an extension is made by the CBI holder and approved by EPA, those CBI claims can expire. So the idea here was that information that still truly warrants CBI protection after 10 years can still maintain it, and other information where that protection is either no longer needed or it's no longer warranted can then enter the public domain. So moving on to the next slide here, if you're wondering why your TSCA CBI claim might be expiring, the new statutory language that I referenced here is TSCA Section 14E. So that section provides that certain CBI claims submitted after the 2016 TSCA amendments will now expire after 10 years unless the submitter requests an extension and again, EPA approves it. And just to emphasize here, the 10 years is the date the person asserts the claim, not from the date that EPA has reviewed or approved it. So next slide. So why is this happening now? And why haven't you heard about it, you might ask? I know Lynn mentioned this before, and it's hard to believe, but it's now been nearly a decade since the Lautenberg amendments were signed into law. June 22nd, 2016 was that important date, and TSCA Section 14 E is structured such that the 10-year expiration for CBI claims made after that date begins, and 10 years is now surprisingly just right around the corner. June 22nd, 2026, CBI claims will start hitting that 10-year mark on a rolling basis. And it's likely not have likely was not a primary focus for many of us, given the breadth and scope of some of the more immediate changes to TSCA in 2016. Changes, for example, to the new chemicals program under Section 5 or under Section 6, the prioritization, risk evaluation, and risk management requirements, even the new CBI substantiation requirements. The particular CBI provision we're talking about today, the 10-year expiration, was just probably not on many of your radars. But we're glad that you've joined today to learn more, and we really do think that this is worth giving some attention. Next slide. So let's get into some of the important details, like which claims expire and which ones do not. The 10-year expiration applies again to all information claimed to CBI that is subject to new substantiation requirements from the 2016 TSCA amendments. And this slide lists some of the common informational elements that are subject to CBI substantiation requirements. So things like the chemical's identity, the chemical structure, the chemical formula, if that chemical has been offered in commerce, The company name is another common CBI claim that must be substantiated. But more broadly, substantiation requirements under TSCA apply to all CBI claims other than those that are specifically excluded in TSCA Section 14C2. So, in other words, if it's information that's not listed in 14C2, the CBI claim must be substantiated, and if it has to be substantiated, it then expires at the 10-year mark. So, what are the claims that do not expire? The next slide. Again, CBI claims that are not subject to substantiation requirements are those that do not expire. These CBI claims will continue to enjoy that protection until the claim has either been withdrawn by the company or it becomes otherwise unqualified. And this might happen, for example, if the information is already out in the public domain, if it's already been shared publicly. So some TSCA CBI claims that are not subject to substantiation requirements, again, here are listed on the slide, and they're listed in TSCA Section 14C2. But it includes things like process information or marketing and sales information, details about a company's suppliers and customers, and the other elements listed here. So if you have made CBI claims for this information, again, those claims will not expire, and you do not need to make an extension request to maintain your confidentiality. But for CBI claims that are subject to the 10-year expiration, next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about the process for getting those protections extended. In short, TSCA affords CBI holders an opportunity to request an extension under TSCA Section 14E2. And there are three main components to this process that I'll go over briefly here. But in short, they're a requirement that EPA provide the notice to the company of the expiration, a requirement that CBI holders timely submit an extension request, and a requirement that EPA then review and make a determination on each of those requests. So first, this statute requires that EPA provide notice of expiration not later than 60 days before the expiration date. And with June 22nd, 2026, coming up soon here, that 60-day mark is coming fast towards the end of April. And we understand that EPA plans to provide notice to companies of this forthcoming expiration in several ways, both by publication of regularly updated lists of TSCA submissions with the impending expirations, and also via direct communication with CBI holders in EPA's Central Data Exchange or CDX system. And I think Rich will go over some of this in more detail, but I'll move on to the second component. Second component is the actual request for the extension. Now, just to be clear again, making the request is optional. A company can always choose not to engage in this process, and its CBI claims will simply expire. But for a company who wants to maintain CBI protection and extend the expiration, the statute requires that such requests be submitted at least 30 days prior to the expiration in order to give EPA some time to conduct its review. And that request must further substantiate the need to extend the expiration period. We'll get into more detail about the mechanics of making the extension requests in just a minute, but wanted to move on to the third statutory component of this process on the next slide. And that third component is that TSCA requires EPA to review all extension requests and either grant or deny them before the applicable expiration date. So if a request is granted, the protection effectively extends for another 10 years from the date of EPA's determination. We do expect that many stakeholders, probably many of you on this call, will want to extend the expiration of their CBI, and that the volume of requests coming into EPA is likely to be fairly substantial. The statute requires EPA to review 100% of all these requests and make determinations within the 30-day period. So it will likely be a challenge, and clearly this is going to be a significant addition to EPA's already significant workload. But we know that they have been working diligently behind the scenes to get ready for this. But we also want to make sure that you are all prepared and ready to go as well. And so on that note, I'll hand things over to Rich to give some more insight on how to best prepare. Rich?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ryan. So the mechanism by which you will seek that renewal of CBI protection is central data exchange, CDX. EPA is building, and we understand there's been some beta testing. The tool is not yet available. I logged on to CDX this morning and it wasn't there yet. But we do expect CDX to be the primary mechanism by which EPA is accepting these renewal requests. But before that happens, before you put the renewal request in, you need to know which cases you have that have expiring CDI. So how do you do that? One, log into your CDX account, look through your form lists, not just your PMN form list, but any TSCA submission that you made in which you claim CBI. If that CBI submission included some substantiated claims, those will be subject to this expiration. So you're probably most worried about your PMN list, but also CDR and really any other submissions that were made 10 years prior to when you're looking, you need to be aware of. So if you have access, actually, let me come back and talk about getting access. EPA is also going to publish on its website, and the link is here, the TSCA-CBI website. EPA will publish a list of claims that are expiring, and so that's another place you can monitor whether or not you have access in CDX. EPA will publish those case numbers that have expiring claims and the expiration dates. And this is going to be, as Ryan mentioned, this is going to be a rolling process. It is an ongoing process. It's not just, we're going to do this in 2016. It's 10 years after any substantiated claim that claim is going to any substantiated claim, that claim is going to expire and require renewal if you seek to continue to protect it. One of the other things, and we would urge you to do this, is sign up for the OPPT listserv, sign up for EPA's alerts, and on EPA's website. Next slide, please. EPA's website, if you go to that CBI page, you see there's a sign up window there. You can put your email address in there, and you will receive those email updates from EPA. So EPA will notify you through CDX. EPA will put the information up on its website, that list of cases with expiring, and EPA will send out these email notices. So those are your ways to find out if you have information that's going to be subject to this CBI renewal. Next slide. So what do you need to do? If you have access to old cases, that is, you have a primary authorized official for that organization, and you have the passphrase to that submission, you can go into that submission. You can unlock the submission. You can update the technical contact. You can update the agent, and the authorized official that then submits that amended submission will automatically update as well. So the submitters automatically update when you put the submit button, but you can also add technical contacts and agents, and you can clean up. If you had somebody retire, you can remove them as a technical contact. So you can amend your list of technical contacts and agents. The submitter, the identity of the submitter is automatically updated when the submission is made, when that individual pushes the submit button. So this will give EPA a variety of mechanisms to contact people if there's any problem. But EPA has been clear that they request that you not alter any previous CBI claims. So the claims that you made in the past, leave those alone. If you are claiming CBI for technical contact or agent or submitter when you're amending, those will require substantiation. The system will require substantiation for those for any new claims. We've had, when we discussed this previously, there were some questions about how to manage older cases that were submitted that did not go through EPA's current mechanism, and our suggestion there is to use the opt-out. Neither Ryan or I were aware that EPA has taken a position on this, but our view is if you check the opt-out box and then in the text box that pops up, simply assert refer back to the original substantiation claims in the submission, that would be that you are effectively referring to and resubstantiating or copying that substantiation that you made originally. Next slide, please. So take stock of CBI claims. Again, go through your CDX submissions. Starting in 2016, June 22nd, 2016, any submission that you made on or after that date that has a substantiated CBI claim that you want to protect, you need to be aware. Gather that list, a list of PMN numbers, support documents that you submitted to support PMNs. 2016 was a CDR year, so CDR submissions. If you did anything under Section 4, if there was any testing responses, anything like any 8E submissions, any submissions that you sent to EPA after June 22nd, 2016 that have CBI claims, need to be aware of whether or not those claims are going to expire, so that you can decide whether or not you want to seek to continue that claim. Make a note of that claim number and the submission date, because as Ryan mentioned, EPA's position is that it is 10 years from the date of submission, not 10 years from the date of EPA's review. And again, this is going to be an ongoing process. This isn't just something we're doing in 2016. You're going to need to stand up a process to do this on a rolling basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, weekly. Somebody in the company is going to need to be aware of and keeping track of these CBI claims and when they're going to expire and whether or not you need to renew them. Next slide. So one of the things to consider is, do you need to extend that CBI claim? It's been 10 years since you made the claim. Would there still be potential substantial commercial harm for its disclosure? If not, maybe you don't need to renew those claims, or maybe there's some claims you do need to review and other claims you do not. But be thinking about that in this process. This is going to be a burden on your company to keep track of these CBI claims and maintain them. So how hard are you willing to work? If it's important to protect, then it's worth the effort to put that in. If it's like, this is too much work, that's fine. Let the CBI claim expire. And maybe it's not worth the work to you, but that's a decision that the company needs to make when you're deciding whether or not to seek these renewals. And it may change your strategy going forward. Maybe going forward, you'll seek to protect fewer things because it's too much of a hassle to keep track of this. That's fine. That's your decision to make. But that key question, what would be the potential substantial commercial harm? That is the threshold for substantiation. So as you are going through this process, be thinking about what that substantial commercial harm would be. And you are going to need to include that, and the renewal requires resubstantiation. So as you are preparing in your list of claims that are expiring, and there's going to be a variety of things. It's going to be submitter identity, it's going to be individual identity, it's going to be chemical identity. There are a variety of different pieces of information that'll have expiring CBI, and you may take a different position on each of them. What we suggest is that you take this opportunity to strengthen your substantiation. 2016, nobody really knew how to write a substantiation notice. We all sort of, we did our best and wrote something, and EPA may or may not have reviewed your substantiation claim back in 2016. So don't take the fact that EPA did not deny your claim as EPA accepting your claim, because EPA may not have reviewed it. But regardless of your claim in, your substantiation in 2016 or later, you have an opportunity to strengthen your claim at this point, right? You can provide more detail to EPA about what the substantial commercial harm would be, that you have an opportunity to make a better case. Now, EPA is going to review these, so there will be a more immediate feedback after these renewals are made. Next slide. Again, this is a process. This is a new process. You're going to have to stand this up internally so that you can keep track of these claims and make sure that you are renewing claims as needed, and affirmatively deciding that you're going to let claims expire if that's that's your choice. But this is got to be a regular part of your CBI maintenance activities. Next slide. So as we mentioned, this is a data flow within CDX. It's not yet available, but EPA expects it to be ready prior to the time that claims begin to expire. EPA will start sending out notifications this month. They should start sending out notifications this month, and then there will be 30 days to respond to seek to maintain your CBI claims. You still have to make the same representations based on both the statute and the CBI regs in 40 CFR 703. Right, you are still taking measures to protect the CBI. It's not required to be disclosed. Disclosure would cause substantial commercial harm. Again, that key threshold. And it's not readily discoverable by reverse engineering. This is important for chemical identity questions. How could someone do some sort of standard set of chemical analyses and figure out what that product is? And there may be a lot of reasons that that's not possible, but that is one of the considerations if you're seeking to extend the CBI protection for chemical identity. EPA, I mean, the renewal system should be relatively streamlined. If you've done any CDX submissions with CBI since the new CBI rule went into place, you're familiar with those substantiation questions. Expect that, right? What you should expect to see is what were the claims that were made, and then for each of those claims, you'll see that set of substantiation questions. And I assume that EPA is going to be putting in the same copy and paste functions as they have for their other CBI substantiation functions. Next slide. So if you do not request the extension, you may lose entirely those protected claims. So it is critically important that you take a firm, don't just wait for EPA to reach out to you. EPA is supposed to reach out to you, but you have an obligation to keep an eye out. So monitor that website, get on that email list, and make sure that you, to the extent that you can, have access to your CBI submissions within CDX. Know those passphrases, have authorized officials with the registrations for the specific organization IDs so that you know what's expiring and that you can reassert those claims timely. Once public, that information is no longer eligible for CBI protection. So if you fail to do this and that information becomes public, it's gone. You can't unring the bell, can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So don't delay, right? There's time now to get started to prepare with what you know, go back and look at your CBI claims, stand up these internal systems so that you can deal with these on an ongoing basis. It is going to be a burden. I mean, there's no question about that. It's going to be a burden on CBI claimants, and it's going to be an enormous burden on EPA. So we have to work. We have to, as claimants, it is our responsibility to affirmatively protect the CBI. If it's not worth your effort to protect it, you probably can let it expire. But Ryan, I wanted to have you weigh in here on what would the legal position be on EPA's part if a claim is not timely renewed?
Yeah, I mean, Rich, I think you said it already that if a CBI claim is allowed to expire, that information is just simply no longer entitled to the protections from disclosure that are afforded under TSCA. That's not to say necessarily that the information will be immediately disclosed. EPA can choose in its discretion to disclose information that's not subject to CBI protections. It may be required in some circumstances to disclose that information. For example, in response to a FOIA request. But for example, if the CBI claim was for chemical identity, EPA regularly updates the TSCA inventory, and EPA would likely move that chemical to the non-confidential portion of the inventory during the next inventory update.
And then once it's out, it's out.
Once it's out, it's out. Once the information has been made public, it's no longer eligible for CBI protection in the future. So can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as you note, Rich.
So next slide.
So that is the end of the substantive presentation. Wait a minute. There I go. That is the end of the formal presentation, but we wanted to alert you to a lot of the information that we have discussed on the webinar. We make available in our many blogs. We're going to be doing a podcast on this. And our TSCA tutor spends a good deal of time talking about how to assert CBI claims and protect them. This is an underserved area of TSCA. You know, we've used a lot of metaphors here. Snooze, you lose, putting stuff back in the toothpaste tube. Protecting CBI is a full-time 24/7 job. And we at Bergeson and Campbell are both excited about this opportunity coming up, but also a little apprehensive because of all the potential bumps along the road. And one thing, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think this initial period of TSCA CBI resubstantiation, will EPA be a little more indulgent of like a week or two if you can demonstrate that CBI wasn't reauthorized timely, but there's no reason to believe it's been disclosed? Is there a colorable argument you can make that because of the newness of the process and other hiccups along the road that you can kind of reinstate after the 10-year mark if you're close but no cigar? Is that at least fighting for, or forget about it?
Yeah, no, I think there are some colorable arguments there. I mean, this is a very new process,
Right.
as you note, Lynn, and there are some statutory requirements that are intended to precede, the 10-year expiration. So the things that I talked about previously, the notice to impacted CBI holders from EPA,
Mhm.
which we haven't. We're expecting those to begin soon, but we haven't seen those come out of EPA yet. There's the development of the new reporting tool in CDX for CBI holders to request
Right.
the extensions. Um, there's likely to be some turbulence in sort of working out the kinks with any new system. But certainly with this new extension request process, and then there's a very short window for EPA to then turn around and review, like I mentioned, 100% of each and every one of those extension requests and grant or deny them within a 30 day window. And so it's a tall order for
Yeah.
everyone. And I think that you're right to note that there may be it may not all come together perfectly, and I think EPA has already publicly acknowledged in its on its website and in its Federal Register notice a few months ago that if there are hiccups in the process, if there are delays with EPA's availability of the CDX reporting tool, for example, they're not going to go out and immediately start releasing CBI. They're going to make sure that they follow the process that's contemplated in TSCA Section 14E.
Great.
And
Thanks,
and
Ryan.
Brian, something you just mentioned reminded me. So EPA's right. EPA notifies you. You respond timely. EPA is required to review. If EPA denies your claim, you still have an opportunity to prevent disclosure. So you do need to monitor not just for that initial notification from EPA, but monitor for that response, that review, so that if you disagree with EPA's denial and you do want to seek a court protection or continued protection of that CBI, that's something else you have to keep an eye out for and do timely.
Thanks, Rich. Good point. Well, let's get into the many questions that we have received both before the webinar and while we've been online here. So some of these I think we've already addressed, but we promised we were going to go through all the questions that we received. So, and some of these bear mentioning again. First question, I'm just going to throw them out, guys, and you
Mhm.
respond to them as you wish. What CBI assertions automatically renew versus those that must be reasserted?
I could
Go
jump
ahead,
in on
Ryan.
that one,
Yeah.
Rich. but feel free to weigh in as well. I mean, there's no automatic renewal per se, but there are some CBI claims that just don't expire. And this is what I talked about earlier in the presentation. The claims that are exempt from substantiation do not expire, and the CBI protection remains until the claim is either withdrawn or if EPA determines that the information no longer qualifies for CBI protection. So that could happen again, for example, if information has already been publicly disclosed by the company. The claims, the CBI claims that must be reasserted are those that are subject to the the decade-old, now not so new substantiation requirements in the 2016 TSCA amendments.
Great. All right. Thank you, Ryan. Next question, and this one is asked often. Will the expiration notices be sent to the individual who originally submitted the CDR data, for example? If that person no longer is with the company, what happens and what can current staff do to address this?
Yeah, so the way we expect it to happen is that the notice will be sent through CDX, so it will appear as a closed envelope in the CDX form list. So you log into CDX where that submission was made, whichever data flow it is, and there's a little envelope next to it where that indicates that EPA has responded, and the submitter, the individual that pushed the button, will get notified that has appeared. And if that individual, if that submitter is no longer with the company, then that notice from CDX may go into a non-existent inbox. And this is why you have this opportunity, and we would suggest that you take this opportunity to go into those old submissions, and to the extent that you can, because you need the passphrase, update who the individual, the submitter, who the submitter is, and update the technical contact and agents. Because if that, one of the things that EPA has been doing in recognition that this is going to be a challenge for everybody, and especially for passphrases from 2016 that you may no longer have access to, EPA has been reaching out to, in other cases not related to CBI sunsetting, but other cases of CBI responses. If EPA sees that the submitter has not opened that response, EPA will reach out to other people that are listed on the submission, including technical contacts and agents. So we've gotten calls from EPA about a client, where someone from BNC or ACTA was specified as an agent, and EPA picks up the phone and says, "Hey, can you check with this company to see if they've gotten the CBI denial?" And then we can contact the company and discover, oh yeah, that submitter, the primary authorized official that pushed the button, is no longer with the company, and someone else can go in and access it and get that response letter.
Awfully nice of EPA to do that. Okay, next question. For chemical substances whose identity was no longer eligible for CBI under the 2020 rule, and that will be moved from the confidential inventory to the public inventory, who will be responsible for obtaining a CAS number if there is none now? Will it be EPA or the companies that submitted the CBI claim?
So yeah, our understanding is that when EPA moves something from the confidential portion to the public portion, EPA works with CAS Inventory Expert Service to establish the CAS number associated with that chemical identity. And so it's EPA and CAS IES that will generate that CAS number and place it on the inventory.
Thanks, Rich. Next question. This participant would be interested to hear whether these changes to CBI practice have any bearing on the biotechnology program under TSCA.
Ryan, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yes. The short answer is yes. The CBI requirements under TSCA, including the forthcoming expiration of CBI claims, applies to holders of CBI claims for information submitted to EPA, and MCAN notices, microbial commercial activity notices, as equally as CBI claims and pre-manufacturer PMN notices. So stakeholders, in the TSCA biotechnology program should be equally cognizant of these requirements. They should be prepared to request extensions of expiring CBI claims where that's necessary, and there's essentially no difference in how CBI claims are treated for chemicals under the new chemical pre-manufactured program versus the microorganism side.
Yeah,
right?
anything that meets the definition of a substance, which, as you know, as EPA has long held, includes microbes. Um, if it is a substance under TSCA subject to CBI claims, then this CBI sunset applies.
So the answer is yes. It
Well, the answer is
links to the
Most definitely.
biotechnology program. Big time. All right, next question. Are Section 5 support documents in scope for reassertion of CBI claims? And the question goes on to say there are no support case numbers currently listed on EPA's list of expiring claims. So Ryan or Rich, you might want to address both components of that question.
Yeah, I can't imagine that there's any difference. If your support document included CBI claims that were substantiated, then I would think that will require resubstant or renewal. How EPA effectuates that may be a challenge if there's not a case number. This is one of the complications that EPA is probably wrestling with right now to figure out how to notify people of the expiring claims in those support notices.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. And, just to briefly address the second part of the question, Rich and Lynn and I have been uh, refreshing the TSCA CBI program website regularly. And as of, just before this webinar, there hasn't been a published list of the submissions with expiring CBI claims. We do expect that coming out of EPA soon. And that list, regular updates to that list will be published on the program website going forward. We have also haven't heard of any CBI holders receiving direct communications about their expiring claims through CDX. So it's a stay tuned on on those notices moving forward.
But we expect it to start on April 22nd. 60 days
60
prior to
days.
60 days prior to 10 years
Rottenberg's
from,
birthday.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
All right, next question. Is there guidance on how to reassert CBI claims that were originally made via paper submissions?
Well, because the CDI the renewal is going to be a separate data flow in CDX, so you will not go back into the original submission and remake the claims in the original submission. There will be a separate data flow within CDX, a separate tool where there'll be some connection between the original submission and your renewal, and you will make those renewal substantiations in that separate data flow. Um, there's that renewal is disconnected from whether that original submission, however that original submission was made. The challenge may be figuring out what the case number is for that paper submission. So just like with support documents, there's going to be some of these low frequency submissions to EPA that had CBI and CBI claims, and those will require some additional effort both on the submitter's part and EPA's part. If you know that you had a paper, like a literal paper submission that was submitted after June 22nd, 2016, it's probably worth reaching out to the CBI program to see, and we'll see when the guidance comes out, we'll see if EPA has already addressed this, but that may be something that you want to proactively reach out to EPA, and you can do in CDX, you can do a TSCA communication, a CDX submission that we've used to get copies of record. If it's in certain instances, a client has lost access to the original submission for whatever reason, and you can request a copy of record through a TSCA communication, and EPA will load that digital copy of record back to that TSCA communication request. So it's still within CDX. So if EPA's got a scan of that original paper copy, you can get a copy of record and make that connection with EPA so that you'll know how to respond. But this is one of those strange cases that that submitters and EPA are going to have to deal with. It's one of these complications. We're just going to have to get through it together.
Ever the optimist, Rich. Getting through. All right, next question. How are amended case claims, specifically 2016 CDR claims, likely to be handled? This registrant writes, we have 2016 CDR submissions that were amended in 2017 and 2019. The case numbers are listed on EPA's list of expiring claims with a not applicable expiration date. And again, we're not seeing that list, but maybe you can answer the first part of the question, how they will be handled.
Well, Ryan, I mean, I think you and I agree that the claims expire 10 years from the initial claim. And whether there was an amendment to a CDR that maintained that claim or a submission in 2020 or 2024 that sought to maintain that claim, the original claim in 2016 is still expiring.
That's right. An amendment to a claim previously asserted does not extend or reset that 10-year expiration date.
All right. Is there any estimated timing for guidance from EPA on how the portal will work and what will be required? Have you guys heard of anything yet?
Timing is soon. EPA is trying to make it simple. They want to reuse the code that they already have in CDX. So again, I think you'll find the substantiation questions will look familiar. I think a lot of the functions will be the same. It is going to be a separate data flow, but that EPA is trying to make it easy on submitters, and they're trying to make it easy on themselves while satisfying their statutory obligations.
All right. There are a lot of questions, guys, so hang in there. I'm switching to a different platform here. Can we see previous submissions if the PMN was submitted by another account holder who no longer works for the company?
Well, if it's the PMN submissions are by organization, not by individual.
Right.
So if an individual, if you had a primary authorized official submit, as long as you have another primary authorized official for that same organization ID by number, it has to be the same org ID number. Don't put in the address. If you type in the address and there is any character different, it's going to be a separate org ID. So you need to make sure that you're using the org ID of the original submission, and all the primary authorized officials for that same org ID should see the same form list. And we urge our clients to have more than one primary authorized official. Primary in the term primary authorized official is not your role in the company. It's your role in a joint submission, a primary and a secondary in a joint submission. Every company should have more than one primary AO so that you've always got that access. You've got continued access to all the forms that have been submitted for that organization. And you may have multiple organization IDs. I mean, there are 4 organization IDs in CDX for B and C. You need to agree as a company on which one you're primarily going to use.
Anything to add, Ryan?
No, I think Rich covered that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Can you repeat the number or the percentage of claims that EPA must review? And I don't know if that's the resubstantiation period, or I think we have to review all the resubstantiation claims, right?
That's right. And so the distinction there is that for CBI claims that are submitted, EPA has to review 100% of those CBI claims for chemical identity. They only have to review 25% for all other CBI claims. But in the context of requests for extension of expiring CBI claims, EPA has to look at all of those. So
Right.
it's just we made the point to emphasize that it will be a significant task for EPA to undertake. We're expecting a lot of extension requests for these expiring CBI claims, and it'll be a lot of additional work for EPA and for the CBI holders.
And I think it bears repeating the point Rich made about CBI assertions that have been made prior to now. One should not assume that your substantiation was rock solid, right? It might mean that EPA didn't look at it.
Right.
So reviewing those claims now is advisable, right, Rich?
Yes, that it strengthen, right? Take this opportunity to look at what you said before. Perhaps you can strengthen it and make it, because we've learned, right? Submitters have learned, BNC has learned, EPA has learned. What does it, what is a solid substantiation look like? So let's take that learning and apply it when we're doing renewals.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Another question, is there a case to be made in the case of CDR that if you claimed an element as CBI in 2016 and subsequently reclaimed the same data element in 2020 or 2024 with the same data, e.g. number of worker, code, is the same for all three CDR cycles. What are you that you are resubstantiating the claim? Is there a
Brian.
case?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so right as I understand the question, right? You made some claim, whatever that claim was in 2016.
Hmm.
Maybe it's company identity. Let's take something simpler, and it's just company identity that you're claiming as CBI, and you claimed it in 2016. You substantiated in 2016. You reclaimed and substantiated in 2020, and you reclaimed and resubstantiated in 2024. Do the 2020 and 2024 substantiations extend the claim made in 2016? Ryan, I think that's squarely in your in your wheelhouse here to respond.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, earlier, there's no effect of extending or resetting the 10-year expiration date for CBI claims that were made in subsequent CDR reporting periods. So if the CBI claim was made in 2016, if it was made again in 2020 and perhaps in 2024, the expiration date is keyed off of that initial claim from 2016.
Yeah. The 2016 claim expires in 2026. The 2020 claim will expire in 2030, et cetera. So for CDR, you're going to be doing these on at 10 years from each time you submitted a CDR claim.
Very clear. Thank you. And I think we've talked about this, but again, it bears repeating. Does the responsibility for initiating the resubstantiation process rest with EPA? What if you don't hear within 60 days prior to expiration?
Yeah, and this is a great question. If you take a look at EPA's website, which we do encourage you to look through that, there's some great information there. And I think that EPA has been very clear. Obviously there's optimism that everything will be ready in time for in 60 days in advance of this the forthcoming expiration dates. But EPA has been clear in its communications that if there are delays, if there are hiccups in the process, that they are not expecting to release CBI, even if there is a delay or an issue that allows the process to exceed the statutory requirements there.
All right. You've made the point that the expiration depends on when the submission was originally made. However, is there a concern if a company proactively resubstantiates once the CDX capability is available?
Yeah, I don't, Ryan, I don't remember if EPA addressed this in its outreach. Um, I know EPA does not want people to go into old submissions and try to resubstantiate. They've been very clear about that. But once the tool is launched, can you resubstantiate in advance of
Mhm.
EPA's notifying you of the 60-day expiration?
We can follow up on that. My recollection, again, is that EPA has been pretty clear that it doesn't want advance resubstantiation and extension requests. It wants the statutory process to play out, and so it's looking to receive those extension requests and resubstantiations in response to notices that it provides to particular companies who are nearing their expiration date. Can follow up on that, but I think that's
Mhm.
that's addressed in EPA's website materials as well.
Thanks, Ryan.
Mhm.
Next question. Does EPA policy allow a CBI claim for a new CAS in the absence of a CDR or PMN submission?
Ask that again.
Does EPA policy allow a CBI claim for a new CAS in the absence of a CDR or PMN submission? I guess I'm struggling with if
Well,
there's no PMN submission, how can there be
Yeah,
a new
the
CAS?
so the if the claim if chemical identity was claimed in a submission, whether it's a PMN or an LVE or even CDR,
Right.
um, and um, and that and that and the substance is in commerce, So that would have required substantiation of the chemical identity, including the reverse engineering questions. And that claim was approved because EPA reviewed 100% of those claims. Then that substance is listed on the confidential portion of the inventory, whether or not it has a CAS number, right? So the fact that something on the confidential portion of the inventory has a CAS number does not mean that its identity has been disclosed, because the existence of a CAS number does not mean that something is or is not on the confidential portion. There's something like 30 million CAS numbers, and there's only tens of thousands of things listed on the confidential portion of the inventory. So, but if that CAS number is associated with commercial activity in the United States under TSCA, then EPA might take a position that the identity has been disclosed and is no longer eligible for CBI protection.
Okay, good. Next question. We have submitted an LVE with CBI before EPA started CDX. How can I update the technical contact or other information? We haven't received any substantiation request from EPA, nor would I expect that before at this time. But any thoughts, Rich,
So
Ryan?
if the submission was made prior to 2016, because the CDX the LVE CDX data flow was available in CDX before Lautenberg was amended. So if you submitted maybe on paper, maybe you did it back in the paper days, or you did it through the old thick client, or you did it through the current system. If it was prior to 2016, Ryan, did those claims expire?
No, no. So I mean, claims that were made prior to Lautenberg, prior to June 22nd, 2016, were not subject to the substantiation requirements, and all CBI claims that are not subject to substantiation are also similarly not subject to this expiration at 10 years.
You still might lose protection if that information is disclosed, but then the EPA would have to find that information and then notify you, hey, this information is public, you've lost your CBI. But it's not subject to the sunset.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Next question. What happens if EPA makes a mistake in working with CASIES to get a CAS number assigned to a chemical that was previously on the confidential inventory and moved to the public inventory with the wrong CAS CAS number?
Well, if it was on the confidential portion without a CAS number, there are things on the confidential portion that don't have a CAS number, and there are things on the confidential portion that do have a CAS number. So if it has a CAS number on the confidential portion and is moved to the public portion, the CAS number will be the same. If it didn't have a CAS number, one will be assigned, and then that's what will appear. The CA index name of the substance as it appears on the confidential portion should be the same whether it's confidential or public.
Thanks, Rich. Next question, and perhaps one or two more since we're coming to the end. Are TSCA audit inspection documents submitted via CDX also in scope? This is a very important question because the
Yes.
answer is yes. Are they in scope of resubstantiation?
Yeah, I think if you've made CBI claims under TSCA, they are, and you made CBI claims that required substantiation, then those claims expire.
Yeah, no, the important take home, I think, in this question is enforcement sensitive information generated in connection with enforcement activities and audits definitely are in scope.
Well, but if there may be separate protection for those communications
There
other
may
than
be,
TSCA CBI.
right, but they're not out of scope by virtue of those protections.
Right. And it really just underscores the importance for companies, who are CBI holders here to take inventory of all of their, submissions to EPA under TSCA to identify which ones are and are not subject to the expiration dates that are coming up.
Last question. How is EPA going to effectuate the expired CBI information in attachments where some CBI claims remain and some redacted information is now going to be non-CBA and need to be unredacted?
The updating of redacted documents is going to be a challenge. And Ryan, the has EPA opined on how mixed, a document that's got mixed substantiated CBI and exempt CBI, how they're going to deal with that? What I recall is the submitter will have an opportunity to update the redacted version to make sure that all this exempt CBI claims are maintained, while the claims that are lost, either given up or denied renewal, that those are the only things that'll be exposed.
Yeah. I I think that makes good sense. I think we'd want to follow up on whether or not that's, whether or not EPA has opined on how to effectuate that process. Is a really good question.
There are many good questions. We have the smartest registrants on planet Earth, and there are many more questions that we have run out of time to answer, but we will answer them. We will submit written responses to all questions submitted, so don't despair. I want to thank Rich and Ryan for an outstanding presentation. We will be forwarding a copy of the presentation, the slides, the bio statement, the resources, and the Q&A document within the next few days. So you will get all this information again. And if you have other questions, this is an important topic. There's a lot going on in CBI, and we didn't even get to some of the really interesting pending litigation ongoing in the District Court for the District of Columbia and EDF v. Zeldin. But perhaps we'll have another webinar in short order, gentlemen, because there's obviously a lot of interest in this, and we really appreciate your time. We've enjoyed spending it with you, and thanks. Take care.